I was thinking on the way over here, though, about this little girl. She wanted $100, and her parents said, well, you know, tell God when you want something and tell him you want to do something good with it. She says, well, dear God, I want $100. I'm going to do good things with it. She wrote her letter out, sent it. Postmaster got it, and the postmaster said, that's cute. That's really nice, but he didn't know what to do with it. He said, well, somebody said, just send it to the president. So they sent the letter to the president, you know, for $100. The president said, I'll send her $5. She'll think that's a lot of money. So she gets the $5, and she's a little bit underwhelmed. But her parents said, always write a thank you. So she wrote a thank you. She said, dear God, thanks for the money, but next time don't send it through Washington. They stole 95%. I could probably just stop there because that's essentially the moral of the story. Don't send your money here. It's not very effectively spent, and often it's used actually to try to damage what you're trying to do, which is, you know, succeed in business. So for the most part, you don't want very much government here. You want as little as possible. Thomas Paine put it this way. He said that government is a necessary evil. And some people kind of recoil to that, and they say, well, government, gosh, he's saying that government is evil. Isn't he part of that government? And it's like, well, yeah, not all of us are evil, but the concept in a way is evil. Why is government evil? Because you have to give up some liberty. You have to give up some of your hard-earned labor, the sweat off of your brow. You have to give up to have government. But this isn't an argument to say, oh, we shouldn't have any government, but it certainly is an argument that you want as little of it as you can possibly get by with. It is an argument, it is the argument for limited government. I call it the liberty argument. So let's say, for example, the government, in order to have order and prevent chaos, wants to tax you 10%. So you're giving up 10% of your liberty, and you might say, well, for order and calm and having the ability to have contracts and stable, you know, the stability of property and knowing that you have time to get in, 10% would be fine, but how about 50%? So at 10%, you're 90% free. At 50% tax level, I'd say you're half free, half slave at that point. So you have to decide, do you want more or less government? So the liberty argument would say you want more liberty, you want smaller government. That should be enough. But there's also another argument, and this is the argument that I call the efficiency argument. Milton Friedman put it this way. He said that nobody spends somebody else's money as wisely as their own. And think about it. All of you are in business. Probably many of you started by having a loan of some sort. Many of you still may have loans. You have to think about it long and hard. Can I make my payments? Can I survive and not go bankrupt? And you make heartfelt decisions. It doesn't mean that your decisions are always right, but what it does mean is that you think long and hard about them. Contrast that with government. So let's say it's your city council. They have $1 million to spend. Do they spend it as wisely as you would spend $1 million? But it gets worse. You get your state government and it's $1 billion they're considering spending, or you get up here and it's $1 trillion. They can never have the same wisdom that you have. The structure of the marketplace breeds this efficiency, and government doesn't have any of this. So this isn't an argument for no government, but it is an argument for being wary of how much government you get. Reagan put it this way when talking about the efficiency of government. He said the 9 most terrifying words in the language are, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. So often government does try to help, and I'm not saying they're bad intentioned. In fact, I know all of these people. I would say almost to a person, they're well-intentioned. But they really don't understand that government inherently doesn't work that well. And we have to have some. We have to have a national defense. We have to have, some roads. We got to have some universities. Even the universities should be funded at the state level, not at the federal level, because things aren't done very well up here. I'll give you an example. I was in a committee hearing not too long ago, and the post office was in. And they were saying, well, they were justifying why they had to pay their executives over $1 million. And I said, well, they said, well, you have to pay people to keep talent. You're going to keep knowledge and talent, you've got to pay people. And I said, well, how much talent does it take to lose $1 billion a quarter? So, even delivering the mail, we're having difficulty with that. So we have to think about, where should it be? Should it be at the federal government level, the state government level, or left to the people? Our founding fathers had it right. The 10th Amendment says those powers not granted to the federal government are left to the states and the people respectively. We've forgotten that, and even business sometimes comes to Washington, they want government to do something for them, or they want something from government. So when people come to my office, I call them the beseechers. They want something from the government. I say, well, where am I going to get it? We're $22 trillion in the hole. Tell me who I should take it from. I want it to be very concrete, that there isn't a money tree. You've got to tell me who I'm going to take it from. Or am I going to add to the debt? And what's that going to do to the country? And we need more of that. Even from pro-business crowds, we all have to understand there is no money tree. There is no money up here. And yet, we go further and further into debt, even with Republicans in charge. And that's one of my gripes. Are there some good things happening up here? Absolutely, there's some good things happening. From the first month that we controlled all three branches of government, we eliminated over $60 billion worth of regulations. Has never been done before. We used the Congressional Review Act to repeal regulations. We have not done that in the history of Congress. $60-some-odd billion. We passed the largest tax reduction, the largest tax cut. And some people want to quibble and complain about the president. The president calls it a tax cut. For 6 years I was up here, and the Republican leadership up here would say, well, we want to try to have revenue-neutral tax reform, which means half of you would pay more and half of you would pay less, and the net effect on the economy would be zero. So Trump came forward and he said, look, we're going to have a tax cut, and I'm going to call it a tax cut. Why? Because it's your money. And we're going to return some of your money to you. And what will that do? That will spur the economy. The economy will grow. Just on the belief in that, the stock market has been doing great since Trump was elected. Remember them saying in the election, oh, the Wall Street, the really smart people on Wall Street really want Hillary Clinton. Well, why did the stock market then rally immediately when Hillary Clinton was defeated? Because they knew that the era of new regulations was over. See, the thing is we've repealed some, we could repeal hundreds more if we could get enough votes to do it, and yet the stock market rallied because they knew at least the era of new regulations was over. We've stopped them dead in their tracks, and you're not getting more regulations. We're still trying to undo some of the bad things that have happened, and a lot of those are still in the process, but you're not getting new regulations. And so when I talk to business people in Kentucky, they come up to me and they say that they have never had this much optimism in their career. Men and women who have been in business and run their own businesses for 30 years have said, I've never seen this much optimism. When they measure consumer confidence right now, it is at record highs. These are all great things. Less regulations, taxes, appointing people to the Supreme Court who will understand that it is the individual and the businesses in our country that provide for the growth of our country, and that we don't want to overburden them. One of the worst decisions the Supreme Court has come down with in maybe 30 or 40 years, maybe 50 years, is something called the Chevron decision. What does that mean? It means that when Congress writes laws, we write kind of a shell of a law. It's a really crummy thing to do. Like in Obamacare, there were 1,800 references to the Secretary of Health shall decide at a later date. So we gave all the power to the Secretary of Health to essentially write the bill and decide what would happen. This happens in every law that's been passed for the last 40 years. So the laws, the things that you complain most about, often weren't even written down by Congress. They were written by some bureaucrat who actually wrote the regulation that you have to live under. So the courts have said, well, because it comes from the elected branch of government, indirectly through these agencies, we must have deference. It's called Chevron deference. One of the biggest reasons why you should want Kavanaugh, why you should be happy that Gorsuch is up there, why you want a conservative, pro-business group of folks on the Supreme Court, is because we should not show deference to unelected bureaucrats. We should not show deference to regulations that your elected officials didn't write. So there is really great hope, and there should be great optimism. The only downside to it, well, there's a couple of downsides, I think, right now. Spending is still out of control. The debt is still a huge problem. Long range for the country, that's a problem. Short term, the tax cuts and the regulatory relief, I think, are leading to a booming economy. Are there other problems? Spending's a big one, debt's one, and I think the potential for a trade war is not good either. So there are some things we're fighting against, but overall, I'm bullish for the country. Right now, I think we're doing great. We can do well again. As far as specific things that might affect you, one of the things that I've worked on is something called association health plans. This is something that, you know, if you own one franchise or 5 franchises or even 15 franchises, I don't think you're big enough to have the leverage to get a good deal on insurance. So what I want to do is make it such that you could all join together and buy your insurance as a group. Instead of each of you getting individual policies, I'd like you to all get a group policy. So there's 400 of you here. There were 10 people for each person, 4,000 employees. I want you to be even bigger than that. I'd like to see 400,000, 500,000, a million people together. Can you imagine if you could buy your insurance through Costco? They have 84 million customers. Imagine if big insurance had to go to one person at Costco and negotiate with them over price. We can't quite do that yet because of the law, and I'm working on trying to change the law. And sometimes I can get the Democrats somewhat interested in this. I'll say, look, it's simply collective bargaining for the consumer. And they like it. As soon as they hear collective bargaining, they go, yes, I'm for collective bargaining. I can be for this. We let everybody come together and collectively you have leverage and power to bargain with big insurance. But then their staff will whisper in their ear that you realize they would be exempt from the Obamacare regulations. And they're like, oh no, we can't have any part of that. We like collective bargaining, but we're not going to have any exemptions. But think about this, and this is something that almost nobody in our country realizes or understands. The people who are doing okay with health insurance are large corporations that cross state lines. They're called large corporate ERISA plans. And guess what they can do? They preempt not only Obamacare regulations, they preempt state regulations. Now, if you're for Obamacare, you're saying, well, that's not right. They'll get terrible insurance. Call up somebody who works for Toyota, General Motors, Ford, or Amazon and ask if they like their insurance or they're unhappy with it. You won't find hardly a person in America that works for a big corporation that doesn't love their insurance. Why should, if you own a McDonald's or a Wendy's or a Burger King, why shouldn't you and your employees get treated exactly the same way Toyota and General Motors do? And yet we still can't get that. We're going to have to change the law. If we could, we transform the marketplace. Because if you're in a large corporation, your insurance is going up at 3 or 4% a year. If you own a single franchise, yours is going up at 25, 30, 40, 50% a year. It's like this. So you've got to get out of the individual market. So what I would tell you is we changed the rule. President Trump changed the rule. It still isn't as good as it needs to be. However, you can, in multiple industries, join your chamber, and the chambers, I think, are going to start selling association plans. There's going to be other groups, too. You can do it yourself within various different franchise groups. But you can get together, and you can be at different entities if you do it within your state. But can you imagine, even if one state got together and most of the businesses got together to join to have the leverage? You don't want to be in the individual market. The whole problem with health insurance is the individual market. So up here, everybody says we've got to subsidize it. Obamacare will subsidize those in the individual market. No, you need to let the individuals get in the group market. What's better about the group market? If you're one of 400,000 and your wife gets leukemia, do your rates go up very much? Do they cancel you? Is there a problem? There isn't a problem. Or there's less of a problem. Your wife is still sick. But the thing is, you don't have the problem with the rates. If you're an individual franchisee owner, you have 20 employees and one person gets leukemia, they're going to charge you based on your experience, so based on the risk of your one small business. You need to be part of a bigger entity. It is the answer to almost all of our healthcare problems as far as expense. And then you don't have to subsidize it. Basically, you just let everybody get a group policy. And then you'll be just like the large corporations. This is something that not only am I working on, but I think you can work on. If you're unhappy with your insurance, go to the chamber in your state and say, we want an association plan. We want to band together with other owners to have a group policy that we can leverage down. In addition to that, there are certain things that we're still working on. The National Labor Relations Board, trying to get reasonable people up there that will give us reasonable rules. We have a Department of Labor that I think is trying very hard to fix the problem on joint employer that was created by the Obama administration. So I think there are a lot of positive things going on. Optimism, I'm very optimistic for the country at this point, but we still need to keep eternal vigilance, and I hope you'll be part of that vigilance. Thank you very much.